Hey everybody, I'm going to ask you to be a guinea pig for me. I recently completed our Iowa State University exhibition for the teams for my class presented their works from based on a semester of work. It was great. We had five teams. They all did a great job. A couple of teams really knocked it out of the park. And what they did, they had their storytelling skills were just better than the rest. It wasn't the analytics of the other teams wasn't good. In fact, the other team had great analytics and maybe even better analytics. But this team was able to really tell a story. So what I want to do is I'm working on a new module for my class for next semester around data-driven storytelling. And I'll be honest with you, I'm pulling lots of content from Brent Dyke's book, Effective Data Storytelling. It's chock full of good stuff. And so I want to walk you through quickly what my framework looks like. And if you have thoughts, ideas, or feedback, please give it to me. I'd rather get it from you than from my students next semester. So let me dive in. I'm going to fly through a couple of sections that you should understand if you follow me. But the real challenge here that I want to get into is to talk about the process we're going to go through. So the journey process, the storytelling storyboard speed is we're going to have an introduction. We're going to explain the situation. We're going to use analytics to understand the situation. We're going to employ the thinking like a data scientist methodology to really build the analytic framework. And then we're going to do some interesting stuff in step 5, the engage step. This is where I am going to be building some HTML graphics, interactive graphics to help drive the engage part. And then finally, we'll conclude the whole session. So those are the 6 stages we're going to go through. I want to go through them quickly. You don't have all day. I do. So anyway, let's go through it. So setting the foundation. It's about Chipotle. And recently, Chipotle has been under a lot of pressure because they're not making their numbers. You know, if people follow me know I'm a big Chipotle fan. I own some stock in Chipotle. I love going there. And they're under pressure and they need to do something. And so we want to do as our first step is to really understand and explain why the data story matters. And so there's some important concepts, some foundations that come out of Brett's book about the essential components of effective storytelling. Obviously, you base it on data, facts, inside analytics. You create a story, the narrative, provide that contextual capabilities. This is really where the Gen AI tools really come in. And then leverage visuals to support that. And not just bland old charts and such, but we have a chance to build HTML interactive graphics and visuals. One of our teams at the competition did this and it blew my socks off. So I was challenged to learn how to do that. And you're going to see some of the results of my work so far. The other thing is that understand that humans are not rational decision makers. And so what we need to do is we need to basically tell a story. And there's all kinds of reasons why they're not rational. I've talked about this, but I think the historical examples between Semmelweis and Florence Nightingale and how one used data and analytics and graphics to convey a point, another one didn't, shows the power of this. So getting back to Chipotle, they're in a world of hurt. We've got some simple graphics here that you can take a shot, look at, but bottom line, the same store sales revenue is dropping, and part of the challenge for this is I call a lethal collapse in store traffic. They're not getting people in the store. And even while they increase prices to their loyal customers, the getting into those next level of customers is going to be tricky. So let's understand the analytical foundation. I'm going to fly through this, right? So what we did is we conduct a virtual thinking like a data scientist workshop, bring together a broad range of different stakeholders, marketing, operations, inventory management, procurement, finance, right? We bring store operations, store management in, and you brainstorm all the different opportunities you have to really address the problem of increasing same store sales. And the one that we land in is how do we leverage it through local events? How do we take advantage of the fact that my Starbucks is located, a block away from the Little League field, or 2 blocks away from a soccer field, or 3 blocks away from a high school? So how do I take advantage of that? And so we create a test market out of on a store in Dallas. It meets some criteria. It's a high event density area, very family heavy demographic, very competitive, right? Probably real world and strong digital adoption. We identify some local events that we could take advantage of that are within a 7-minute radius or drive range of our store. And then we get into building an analytic framework. Now, this is going to be pretty simple for most people because we're going to build on the data science, thinking like a data science methodology. So we've already picked our use case. Step 4, we came out and said, we're going to try to increase same store traffic or store traffic through local events marketing. And we're going to go through steps 5, 6, 7, and 8 to actually build out the analytics. So here's our use case in detail. Here's step 5. You should all be familiar with step 5, right? We identify the scores and the features that we need to support the decisions that we have to make in support of our targeted use case. Let me say that again. Got a targeted use case. Increase same-store traffic or increase store traffic through local events. You have decisions that are being made by store management, by marketing, procurement, and logistics around trying to do that. We want to build a score, a couple of scores, 2 or 3 scores for each one of those decisions so that we can have a more triangulated, more accurate, more relevant decision that we can make. We talk about the different analytics tools we're going to use to build that. We actually map then all this together to make sure we've got a user experience set up, and then we're going to measure effectiveness so we continuously learn and adapt. Again, these steps should be very familiar to people who've read my book. If you haven't read my book and you want a free copy of it, send me a note. So out of this process, we identify 5 major analytic scores or propensity scores. These propensity scores are going to be housed in our local events entity propensity model. And these scores, the local event fit, local event impact, promotional effectiveness, right? These are all the scores that the stakeholders are going to use to support those key decisions they're trying to make. And the entity propensity model looks like this, right? We're building for each event within our 7-mile radius. We're going to build a score for each of those events based on these scores we identified here, right? This is a sample for only 15 events, but you can imagine this is probably hundreds of rows that you've got for events happening within the perimeter or the 7-mile radius of your store. Now it gets fun. And this is where I had a chance to test myself. And so what we're going to do is we're actually going to engage in our journey here. We're going to define the problem. We're going to test hypothesis. We're going to do some analysis. We're going to validate. We're going to make sure we can operationalize it. And then at the end, we're going to measure how effective we are so we can continuously learn and adapt. And so the first analytics I've built is around understanding the current state assessment. And when I select this, voila, I get an interactive screen. So I can select and look at daily results or weekly results, monthly results. I get some feedback down below on the gap as I bounce between these areas here. So I wrote this using Claude, prompted it, and it created the HTML for me. Let me say that again. It created the HTML that I render here. And I did it through a prompt. I didn't code anything. Now, I had the advantage of all the details from my thinking like a data science methodology, so Claude was well trained. You can also do this with ChatGPT, but I'll be honest, Claude I thought was better. So I went with Claude, and so I got an assessment here. And so let's go to the second stage here, is to develop hypothesis, which is I want to test what events I might want to go after. Again, I select this, it opens another screen up for me. Right? So I can shrink a little bit so I can pick events, and you can see this hypothesis score change, right? View soccer tournaments are great. And as I check these things, you can see the things in the bottom, everything's changing, and benchmarks, validation. So it's very interactive, and I can click thing and see impacts and all the charts, and I can play with this in. I developed this using HTML, and it's a tool that I want my students to be able to master so that they can use analytics to support their journey as well. So you kind of get a feel for what I'm doing here, right? So we'll keep going through. This is about looking at local partnerships and which ones might be the best options for us, because having events is great, but being able to have partnerships with the Little League organization or the high school organization is critical. I'm not going to click on this one. This is a simulator that allows me to simulate the events I've chosen with which partners and how much I want to invest. Again, underpinning all of this are those entity propensity scores. Right? There underneath this, it's helped me to drive which events make the most sense for my store. I love this one. I'm not going to run through, but it's a simulator. And I can actually simulate through different speeds the people coming in the store and how am I going to reallocate resources between cooking and serving and running the bills. And the last one here is store manager dashboard. And I'm going to show this one really fun. So here's my store manager dashboard. So again, I can pick and choose and I get results here. Oh, by the way, I can click a button that says optimize with AI, and it picks the right one for me. And I can click a button that tells me why it picked that. So I can actually build a capability for the tool to optimize it And then I can come back and say, well, that's a great optimization, but I don't want Little League. I want soccer. I'm more of a soccer person, and I want, farmer and market, right? Again, the AI can make a decision for me based on all the information I've given it. I have a chance to override that. And by the way, as we get into this process, the next step in the process is to track that. How effective was it? So the decision the AI model made versus the decisions I decided to go with, it can evaluate both so it can learn, so it can update those entity propensity models, those scores inside each event to figure out which event is more appropriate so it can learn through the next iteration. So that's pretty much it. This is the whole story, data-driven story, right? You build a foundation with data, right? You basically build this narrative, leveraging a lot of concepts I stole from Brent's book. And then basically the amplifiers. This is the stuff that I thought was really cool. And I find myself diving down into rabbit holes as I try to build more AI simulations using these tools. Anyway, I hope this was useful. And please, please give me your feedback. I want to know, does this work? What else should I add? If you want me to add more simulations, I will, because it's a lot of fun. And anyway, thanks for your time. And as always, cheers.